So in honor of the fall season, I usually do a replay of Night in the Woods. It's the kind of story where as I grow older, I find new things to appreciate about it and relate to it in different ways. This year, I thought it would be fun to decompile the game and poke around and see what kind of fun stuff I could find. And there's actually quite a bit of unused content and fun development tidbits, so I also thought I'd make a video sharing it with you all. Yeah, it's kind of a deviation from what I normally post, but I haven't posted in 7 years, so what do I have to lose at this point? So let's start off with the fun stuff, the art assets. First up we have the bulletin board flyers, which are normally obscure so you can't really see them. There's the babysitter flyer. Katie Washington has never lost a child at the park. Deer cleaning, full service, no appointment needed. What the heck is deer cleaning? It does not elaborate on that and I have no idea what it means. Firewood for sale. I have too much firewood. I don't even know how. I have so much. It's good firewood. I will vouch for this. There's also a ton of area blockouts, and one, it's pretty cool seeing the process. Like, I guess this would be the first draft of what they put in the game before they went over and finalized all the assets. For the dream sequences, there were going to be all these secret rooms. For the first dream sequence, it would have been an area with some trees and maybe there's some point of interest in between them. For the second dream, you would be able to encounter ghosts eating dinner. Wow! For the third dream, you would have been able to encounter ghosts shoveling coal. Pretty cool. I wonder why they cut that out. Maybe it's too tonally different, because I don't think the comedy of seeing ghosts doing these mundane things would really fit. In the Underhill, there's also a cut area where you would have been able to go into someone's laundry room where there would be a broken dryer, and May would have been able to climb into it. At some point, there was going to be a tunnel that went all the way from town center west to the basement of the food donkey. There's also another door that leads to the big abandoned. I'm not sure what this is referring to. They were also planning on having a bell tower. I'm not sure where this would have been, but there might have been a sequence where maybe you were climbing up it and you would have rung the bell or something. There's also a couple of unused characters, and I think these characters might have been in the demo, but I have not been able to find a way to download the original Night in the Woods demo, so someone who actually played it can confirm, leave a comment. But yeah, we have these 3 teens. These characters actually do have demo dialogue, I know that for sure. They're very 2010s hipster looking, especially the girl with the wide brimmed hat. There's a few walk cycles for townspeople. I like this mouse with the puffer jackets. They look very cute. There's this lone sprite of I think this is just like a shitty recolor of Greg with a dark toupee, but his name is Rick, who I'm assuming is Rick Wreckage. Greg references Rick in one of his conversations with May as having told him about the porn logs. So this is the guy. This is the guy. There's this old version of Selmers. She looks so content with her earbuds plugged in. She looks kind of like a sleepy cat too. There's also this strange image of Selmers looking like a undead zombie. It's labeled Selmers diagram. I honestly don't really know what this could have been used for, but sure looks interesting. So some of the sprites in the games are obscured by the dark lighting, and most of them, when you take away the lighting, are just plain colorless silhouettes. But some sprites were actually made in full color, like Greg getting attacked by the owl and all the sprites in the final standoff with Ide. It kind of makes me wonder if at one point there was a version of these scenes where you could more clearly see the characters. If I'm misremembering this, I'm gonna be so embarrassed. But I think these actually might be unused Greg animations. We have this one of Greg putting his hands in his pockets, and also a walk cycle. There's also this short animation of him giving a thumbs up. There's also an unused animation of Germ's grandma dying. As if her conversation wasn't already creepy enough, she just straight up dies here. Or maybe it's a fake out and she's playing some kind of sick joke on you. Speaking of Germ, he's also got these pause mode sprites, which are never used. Maybe at some point he would have gone and investigated the mines with May and the gang, and he would have been there to help clear out the debris from the cave-in. But that's just my guess. I'll just rapid fire off the last few. There's this animation labeled Greg Avatar, which I'm guessing used to be his chat icon on May's computer. At some point, May's journal was separated into draws and write tabs. There's this logo that says, "Be forever here." There's an unused Girl Scout character that for some reason is decomposed into like a bajillion different sprites. I'm not putting that together, but you can use your imagination. She also has some unused dialogue, which I'll get to later. There's this black and white logo, which confuses me. What is YMV? We may never know. Finally, there's a few kind of strange art assets. We've got a picture of Smokey the Bear. There's this sick looking plaid hat labeled DB. And there's this painting of 3 wise men. Somewhere in the game, all 3 of these images are hidden somewhere. But yeah, that's everything I got from the art assets. Now moving on to the code. So first off, there's actually quite a bit of procedural generation in Night in the Woods. For example, the snowflakes in Lost Constellation are actually all unique. There's a script to generate unique snowflakes, which is a really cool attention to detail. The snacks at the Snack Falcon under the counter that Greg works at are also randomized every single day. So every single day in every single playthrough, there will be a different arrangement of snacks underneath the table, which is pretty cool. There's also some logic to randomly assign what time of day it is on the cat clock in May's kitchen. If it's evening, it's limited to a range of evening times, and same thing for when it's night. There's a couple of scripts for unused pause modes. FYI, pause modes are the little segments in the game where you go into May's perspective. There's one called Birdcage pause mode. The script is empty, but I found this footage of a test scene showing how far they got with the idea. There's a conveyor belt pause mode. This would have occurred during the grocery shopping friend quest with B. This one actually seems to have been pretty fleshed out. There would have been dialogue for if you put the groceries or the divider on the wrong side, or if you accidentally put someone else's groceries on your side. You could also accidentally drop all 3 of those things on the ground, and there's a good ending and bad ending for if you successfully arrange all your groceries. B beat machine. There's some references to pause mode in here that suggests you being able to interact with B's drum kit, pressing buttons and changing the BPM of the track. Maybe out of spite, May would have tried to mess around with it during band practice, but that's just my guess. There's an inventory HUD script, which I guess means that at some point in either Night in the Woods or Lost Constellation, they were playing around with the idea of having an inventory management system. They actually used their own tween system, or at least it looks like it, because there's this script called iTween that's a whopping 3,700 lines of code. It has functions to tween audio, colors, the character's eyes, and generic game objects. I could see that they probably had a need to make their own tween animation system, since there isn't really a good way to do tweens in Unity itself. Finally, the part that makes 90% of the game, the dialogue. There's a bit of unused dialogue and some cut dialogue from the demo. I'm not sure if some of this is old dialogue that I'm seeing from old versions of the game after it released or something, but I'm just going to take everything labeled as old to mean unused. So in the Town Center East dialogue, there's this exchange with a character named Travis. Travis tells May that she sucks and complains about his car getting trashed. May snaps back that he got it coming. And that is the only time Travis is mentioned in any of these dialogue files. There's this dialogue with Greg getting stuck on the roof from the demo. So the story is he snuck onto the roof but accidentally locked the door behind him. He also stole a garden gnome from Mr. Twigmeyer, and after exchanging some silly banter, they decide to go to Donut Wolf and contemplate whether they should take the gnome with them or throw it off the side of the building. If you throw the gnome off the building, it hits a car, which sets off the car alarm. In the demo, after deciding to get Donut Wolf with Greg, you're taken straight to a pause mode scene where May and Greg both eat donuts and progressively get more and more sick. Really similar to how May gets more sick in the final hangout with Angus and Greg. Originally, you would have first met Bruce in Town Center East as well. He also would have been hanging out on the roof for some reason. Bruce seems to want to get out of Possum Springs because everyone knows not to stop in Possum Springs anymore. May gets confused and wonders what Bruce is so afraid of, but Bruce doesn't respond and ends the conversation quickly after that. The 3 cut teens we saw from earlier were also in the demo version of Town Center East. May would have had a short conversation with them. They'll also let you know that Greg is stuck up on the roof and that they considered calling the fire department but didn't for some reason. This part is really cool. There's some commented out dialogue from the final conversation that May has with the janitor. After the janitor walks off to the left and May says, "Wait, how do you know my name?" There was supposed to be a giant astral god looking bird that would fly up in the background. May would be taken aback and think that the janitor had transformed into the bird, but then the janitor just walks back on screen and goes, "Holy jamoli, you see that big bird? That's a great northeaster king crane," and then leaves again. They probably cut that joke out because they wanted to make it more ambiguous on whether the janitor was some mystical being or not. In the Underhill, there's a conversation with Rick Wreckage. May finds him underneath his car doing work on it. May comments that it's kind of dangerous to be under a car that's on a hill, but Rick is too much of a boss to care about it. Apparently, Rick is in a band called the Creeping Deadlies, and they play at the bar. In the ravine, there's a bunch of dialogue of May reacting to how dark the ravine is and deciding to collect a bunch of fireflies so that she can see the bottom and get the nerve to jump down. However, once you collect more than 8 fireflies, they all dissipate and May resolves to just jump off of the pipe anyways. In the demo in May's house, there's some dialogue for interacting with the bathroom door, which is cut from the final game, and with Mom and Dad's bedroom door. For the bathroom, she just talks about not needing to use the bathroom, and for her parents' room, she talks about barely going in there and only remembering that there's a naked people statue and a cedar chest, which is an heirloom from her grandmother. There's an entire yarn file that depicts an old version of May's dreams, which is pretty cool. So at some point in development, instead of being transported to these dark and surreal versions of Possum Springs and having to find all the musicians, you would have been exploring a nighttime version of the actual Possum Springs. So in this file, May sees a group of people holding a ceremony in the Possum Springs Cemetery for a man named Brian Rook who suffocated in the mines. May speaks to a guy sitting on a fence who references Possum Springs, Pennsylvania, confirming the exact location of Possum Springs, where, as in the game proper, it's kind of just meant to be an ambiguous location in the Rust Belt. The guy thinks he's hearing a ghost, and May freaks out, thinking she's died in a house fire with her family in it, prompting her to have an astral freakout and wake up from her dream. In Town Center West, there was going to be 2 Girl Scouts selling cookies on one day. May would question why they're selling cookies, and the girls would assert that there's fall Girl Scout cookies now, and harass May for not buying any. There's some demo dialogue where if you interacted with the pole outside of Snack Falcon, May would be reminded of a story her granddad told her about a sailor whose ship sunk and ended up stranded on the ship mast, which got caught in some coral. The sailor was stranded on the pole for a week before the ship fully sank, presumably to be consumed by the sharks that were surrounding the ship. Kind of a dark story about just waiting for death to happen. There's old versions of all of the daily teen dialogue. It seems like there were a lot more conditions to unlocking certain parts of the conversation before. For example, you would have had to have known Lori or maybe have talked to her once in order to talk to the teens. If you've never interacted with Lori, one of them would just tell you to F off every day. And if it goes on long enough, May eventually breaks and goes, "No, today you F off." To which they respond, "Dang, bud." There's also a cut conversation near the end of Act 3 where the teens complain that May is not old enough to buy them beer. May says that beer tastes gross. Then the teens call May uncool and start waxing poetic about how life in general sucks. In the demo, Mrs. Quelsey would have been there. She would have miraculously found signal in the tunnel. After speaking to her, it turns out that she has a whole map of unsecured Wi-Fi hotspots in the area. She talks about how teens that carry around phones probably just have porn stored on it, since there's no signal anyways. Then she advises May to leave Possum Springs if she can. Mr. Twigmeyer was originally going to have more dialogue as well. He disappeared after the first day in the game, but in the files there's dialogue for pretty much every day. They mostly talk about raking the leaves, implying that May would have walked outside and seen Mr. Twigmeyer raking the leaves every single afternoon, which would be kind of weird, so maybe that's why they cut it. These last 2 aren't really cut dialogue. more like obscure dialogue, since I don't think you would normally encounter this in a regular playthrough. So when you finish the band practice, May's friends will comment on how she did. There's actually quite a few different conditions. If less than 50% of the notes are registered, meaning you just sat and stared at the screen for most of the song, B and Greg will comment on it. If you get less than 20% of the notes correct, Greg and B will get offended and think you're not taking band practice seriously. In the mini game with Greg, where you're shooting arrows at the forest god, there's some funny dialogue if you hit certain objects 7 times in a row. If you use all of your arrows to hit something stupid like the ground or a barrel or nothing, Greg just gets progressively more disappointed in you. On the flip side, if you hit between the forest god's eyes or its ass 7 times in a row, Greg will be super impressed. And yeah, that's pretty much it.